You're listening to the Fresh Hell podcast. Fresh Hell contains stories of a disturbing and often graphic nature and is intended for a mature audience. Please don't let your kids listen to this, or they might turn out like us.
Hello, I'm Annie in the USA. I live in Massachusetts, which is about halfway between Boston and Salem. I live with my husband and our 2 dogs.
And I'm Johanna in the Austrian countryside, where I live with my husband and our 2 dogs. And you're listening to your favorite international podcast. The podcast hosted by 2 women on different continents who never met in real life, but who get together once a week to bring you the freshest of hellacious content.
That's right. If this is your first time listening, our episodes fall into 3 categories: murder, mysteries, or macabre topics, and we generally cover historic happenings, with a few notable exceptions.
Yeah, that's right. And before we get into today's topic, we would love to give a huge shout out to our newest Patreon member, Vanessa. Thank you, and also thank you to all of our other amazing patrons. You keep the mics on, you keep the coffee flowing, and you keep the podcast as ad-free as possible. And we're so grateful for your support. Not a patron yet? No worries. Listen until the end of the episode and we'll tell you all about the bonus content, Cinema Macabre, and the live get-togethers.
Also, don't forget it's that time of year again. We need your Halloween listener stories. Send us your spooky, creepy, or just plain weird experiences to freshhellpodcast@gmail.com so we can share them in our annual special. Oh, and also, because we love you, there's also a giveaway. One lucky Hellion will win a bundle of Austrian candy. It's very exciting stuff.
That's true.
I'm jealous already.
Like you don't get Austrian candy every year.
I know. I do. I love it.
But you can never have enough Austrian sweets.
You can't. It's good that you only send, like, Christmas is perfect because then otherwise, it's a slippery slope.
All right, so that's it for now. More about all of that later. Today, we're going to finish up our discussion of crocodilians that we started in episodes 290 and 291, where we discussed alligators and caiman. So please go back and listen to them if you haven't already, because now it's time to dive into crocodile-infested waters.
That's right. Welcome to Croc Talk, right? This is so good. So as we said previously, there are 26 species of living crocodilian, and they are divided into 3 families. Alligatoridea, which include 8 species of alligator and caiman, which we've previously discussed, as well as Crocodiliae, which is 16 species of the quote-unquote true crocodiles, and Gavialidae, 2 species, the gharial and the tomistoma, which we'll be discussing today.
Okay, so let's quickly talk about the gharials and the tomistoma before moving on to the crocodiles that are far more dangerous to humans and, sadly, also their pets. Gharials are the longest of the crocodilians, with males reaching somewhere between 5 and 6.5 meters, so that's 16 to 21 feet, and females reaching 3.5 to 4 meters on average, that's 11.5 to 13 feet. An adult can weigh up to 400 pounds or 180 kilos. Gharials are usually found in murky waters like around northern India and Nepal, and they are critically endangered due to habitat loss among other issues. Despite their massive size and long, thin snout full of over 100 needle-sharp teeth, they are pescatarians, fish eaters, and they are very shy. They struggle on land and want nothing to do with us humans. The name gharial is derived from the Hindi word gara, meaning a clay pot. Why? Well, because the male gharials have a bump on the end of their snout that looks like a gara, a little clay pot. Gharials have the largest eggs of all the crocodilians, and that's all you really need to know about gharials today, as they are not looking to attack you. They don't want to make a meal out of you. Like most crocodilians, should they find a dead body, they'll scavenge and they'll bite if provoked. but generally speaking, they are absolutely not a threat.
The tomistoma, however, has been found to be the culprit of a number of attacks on humans. Tomistoma can be found in the fresh water of eastern Sumatra, Kalimantan, and western Java in Indonesia. It's also found in parts of peninsular Malaysia and Sarawak in Malaysia. It was once thought that they were in Thailand, but there hasn't been a confirmed sighting in Thailand since the 1970s, so that one is less certain. Males can grow up to 16 feet or 5 meters long, and their usual diet, it's mostly fish, although they have been known to attack monkeys. So if they attack monkeys, the odds are of them going for a child are higher. Their snout starts out wider than the gharial, and then it narrows to a point at the end, so they're really good hunters in the water. There's an article in the Journal of Marine and Freshwater Research from August 2022 entitled An Analysis of Tomistoma Attacks on Humans by Brandon Seidlau, Agata Steinowitz, Marian Saya, and Kyle J. Shaney. In this report, they collected the reports of 31 attacks by the tomistoma. 10 of them were fatal between January 2010 and December 2019, and they analyzed them. They found that the Jambi province in Sumatra had the most attacks, and that the victims were most often men fishing at the time of the attack. They write about how the tomistoma has moved from being vulnerable to endangered due to a loss of habitat by humans, and they worry that these attacks, while rare, might also lead to more aggression by humans toward these already very vulnerable crocodiles. So that's the tomistoma.
Yeah, and now it's time to move on to the quote-unquote true crocodiles. So let's talk about the differences between alligators and crocodiles, because they do look kind of similar. If you're like me and you always wonder, well, is that a crocodile or is that an alligator? And what the hell is the difference anyway? Well, one easy way to distinguish the two is by the shape of their snouts. Gators have like a U-shaped snout, while crocodiles have a V-shaped snout. Crocodiles have incredibly strong bite force. In fact, the saltwater crocodile has the strongest bite force of any other animal on Earth. Next difference is the size. Gators get big, but crocodiles are huge. And according to a How Stuff Works article by Mitch Ryan, quote, an adult male American alligator can grow to a maximum length of 14 feet or 4.2 meters, while an adult crocodile can reach an astounding maximum length of 20 feet, so that's 6 meters. Even when we look at extremes, the largest crocodile in captivity was a full 4 feet, so that's 1.2 meters, longer than the largest alligator ever caught. End quote. The next big difference is where they live. So up until now, all of the species of crocodilians we've discussed live in freshwater. But crocodiles possess lingual salt glands in their mouths that alligators do not have, which allows the crocodiles to excrete excess salt without dehydrating themselves. Also, their feet are different. Gators have webbed feet, and true crocodilians have separated toes. So who has the better jazz hands? You decide.
Speaking of jazz hands, there are a lot of videos and photos you'll see of crocs sort of doing jazz hands. And occasionally you'll see it saying, oh, look, they're trying to lure people toward them with the flashy jazz hands. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening. They are really smart and they do use lures. We'll talk about that more. But this is actually something they do when they are fishing. We spoke in previous episodes about the crocodilian integumentary sensory organs, the ISOs. These are these specialized sensory receptors that are found in the skin of all crocs. They look like freckles or like little black dots all around their sort of snout. But what these are actually really complex dome-shaped structures that are highly sensitive to touch, temperature, and chemical changes in the surrounding environment. ISOs are particularly important for detecting subtle water movements, and that helps crocs locate their prey when they're in the water, right? The fish is under the water, their eyes are above the water. So when you see a croc doing the jazz hands or just stretching their arms and feet all the way out, what they're actually doing is feeling for fish while just floating around. I'm being a log, nothing to see here. I'm a log, la la la. And then all of a sudden, they'll feel the fish approaching and they snap down with just insanely fast precision, right? So yeah, that's what they're really doing. They're fishing. I feel like I would like fishing more if that's how I did it. Jazz hands were somehow involved. It's fine.
Fishing is patience mostly for
It
crocodiles,
is.
for crocodilians and humans alike in a way, right?
And they are so patient and smart. We're going to talk more about that. So all of the true crocodile species are tropical species, and they are way less cold hardy than their alligator cousins. Despite this, you will find them all over the world. So let's talk about some of the members of the true crocodiles, starting with the freshwater crocodile, also known as the Australian freshwater crocodile, John Stone's crocodile, and my favorite, the freshie. This species of crocodile is native to northern Australia, and unlike its much larger Australian relative, the saltwater croc, the freshwater crocodile is not really known as a threat to human life. Although it, of course, will bite in self-defense, quick, non-fatal attacks have happened, but these are thought to be cases of the animal being startled or cases of mistaken identity, rather than an intentional attack, which is what you're going to see in some of these other animals.
We also have the American crocodile, which can be found in Florida, as well as both the Atlantic and the Pacific coast of North Mexico to North America, as far south as Peru and Venezuela, Cuba, Jamaica, Hispaniola, Grand Cayman. So that's pretty much the area. Fun fact, Florida is the only place in the world with both alligators and crocodiles. Attacks by American crocodiles have been reported in Mexico, Costa Rica, and Panama. So they're in North America, Central America, South America. And one of our main sources for all of these episodes is the IUCN, so the International Union of Conservation of Nature. And within this lies the SCC CSG, which stands for Species Survival Commission and Crocodile Specialist Group. And their goal is long-term conservation of the world's crocodilians. The operation of the CSG relies entirely on financial support from private donors, and they are kind of the fountain of knowledge for this topic.
It's a really interesting group because it's not just scientists and conservationists and naturalists and people who understand that stuff, but it's also farmers, both people who are battling these animals for their livestock, and also people that have farms of alligator farms. It's kind of inspiring. It's a lot of acronyms, isn't it, though?
Yeah, it's a lot.
What do you do for a living? Oh, I work with the IUCN SSC CSG. You know, I love it.
But they do a lot of stuff. They did a study showing that the American crocodile attacks more people than any other crocodile in the Americas. So that's more than the black caiman or American gator we discussed earlier, but that unlike those two species, attacks from an American crocodile was less likely to be fatal. They point out that attacks from their old world relatives, specifically the Nile and the saltwater crocodiles, are far more common than attacks of the American crocodile. And when you hear the terms old world animals in general, that's referring to species native to Africa, Asia, Europe, while new world animals are those from the Americas. And these terms, of course, became used after 1492 and the subsequent Columbian exchange of plants and animals between the continents. There was, of course, unfortunately, also an exchange of disease, both intentional and also not intentional at this time. And it's how, for example, horses, cattle, sheep, pigs, smallpox came to the Americas, and corn, tomatoes, turkeys, tobacco, smoking went to Europe.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite sort of fun facts about Mexico is I think people are always shocked. They always think that tomatoes are from Italy. And they're always really surprised when I tell them, nope. I also wanted to point out that, when they're called the American crocodiles, and I read something on a thread, it's like, why do they use that term when they're only in South Florida? And it's like, okay, well, you have to remember that there was a Central America and a South America. They're all America. Today, the largest population of American crocodiles are found in the Southern Everglades National Park in Florida. They are also around the canals of Turkey Point Nuclear Power Plant, which is fine. I mean, I know they're there because the cooling tanks put out like warmer water, right? And they love the warm water. And I appreciate that. And I know nuclear energy is like kind of the cleanest we have. And even though I know all these things to be true, and I consider myself a pragmatic person, there is still some long lost remnant of the 80s child watching cartoons inside me that's like, I don't feel like crocodiles in a nuclear power plant canal. Is anyone tracking this? Like, just in case we have a Mutant Ninja Turtle situation, but with crocodiles?
I was more thinking about the Simpsons fish with the,
what was like 3 eyes? Too many eyes, blinky. Yeah.
Blinky, exactly.
I fell into Boston Harbor once, and back when I used to think I would have kids, I used to say all the time that if they had too many eyes or not enough eyes, it's because I landed in Boston Harbor. Oh, yeah. So they're also found in Miami's Biscayne Bay and throughout the Florida Keys. Individual crocodiles have also been found kind of spotted throughout Florida, farther north than you would think. In fact, the northernmost record of a crocodile was in the Isle of Palms, which is near Charleston, South Carolina. So that's surprisingly far. Charleston, South Carolina, it would be rare, but it could snow there. It would freeze there, If you live in the United States, you are far more likely to be attacked and seriously injured by an alligator. But back in 2014, a couple were both bitten by an American crocodile while swimming in a canal that was known to be infested with them.
Yeah, I mean, but they were at least luckier than the tourist who was peeing in a canal in Cancun who had his arm bitten off.
I know. Carl Monzon, 40, was on holiday in Cancun. After a boozy night, he took a stroll down to Nichupute Lagoon in Quintana Roo to urinate, the local Riviera Maya reported. An on-duty security guard heard screams from the lagoon at 3:30 in the morning and found the grisly scene. A crocodile had grabbed the man's right arm above the elbow, completely severing it. Paramedics arrived and attended to the tourist, who was then taken to a private hospital where staff confirmed the remainder of his arm had to be amputated due to the severity of the injury. And it says, despite a number of signs around the lagoon warning people about the estimated 150 crocodiles in residence there are several crocodile attacks in Nichupte? Nichupte every year. Yeah, and then it goes on to say, in 2015, a man died after being dragged to the bottom of the lagoon by a crocodile.
You know what's crazy? I mean, if I've been living there and now it's kind of, you just unlocked a core memory. I've completely forgot that there were crocodiles in the lagoon.
Yeah.
I've never seen any while I was living there. I didn't hear of any attacks, but I remember now, I completely kind of forgot this memory that there are crocodiles in the lagoon in Cancun. Yeah, that's true.
There are. Yeah.
Because I think there were problems after the hurricane. I remember that because the water and the lagoon and the water in the lagoon and the ocean kind of hit. That
yes,
you have this kind of small strip of land where all the hotels are located.
Well,
right?
It's like when Australia had bull sharks at the golf course. Same thing, right? You get that flood waters. Yeah.
I completely forgot that it's the lagoon. Yeah.
That was actually a quote from the New Zealand Herald. So newzealandherald.co.nz. Really interesting stuff. And I don't mean to be indelicate, but I'm always like a bright side person, and you can cut this if I'm being terrible, but my first thought was, okay, he lost his arm, but at least he didn't lose like any other appendages that might have been dangling over the water at that time, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like all things considered, he's really, really lucky to be alive.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you go further south, the more fatalities you're going to find. A lot of the things that you read mention specifically a particularly terrible week in May 2007. So let's discuss that quickly because it's very sad. So according to the Associated Press, on May 3rd, Kevin Tapia Alatorre was standing with his parents on the banks of the Tomatlan River, about 50 miles south of Puerto Vallarta, when a 9-foot, so nearly 3-meter crocodile grabbed him. According to Roberto Cortez, the director of public safety for the town of Tomatlan, the crocodile emerged from the water at least twice with the child in its jaws and fled after police officers shot at it. Kevin's body was found a few days later, about 200 yards from where he was attacked.
The next one really upset me when I read it. According to a Reuters article, in Costa Rica, just a few days later, so on 5th of May, the 13-year-old Brady Escorcia was swimming with his brother in San Francisco de Tortuguero on Costa Rica's Atlantic coast when a crocodile attacked him. Witnesses said, quote, that the boy screamed that the crocodile had bitten his leg before the reptile dragged him underwater. The teenager emerged once more, just long enough to yell goodbye to his older brother, police official Victor Cervantes told Reuters, citing witnesses. He shouted, "Adios, Pablito," before he was dragged under a second time and he hasn't been seen since, Cervantes said, end quote.
Can you imagine losing?
Oh my God.
I cannot imagine that happening to Moose. Like that's...
I don't know. I find it so upsetting that he yelled goodbye. This is so sad.
I do too.
Because it gives you realize he had so much time to even think this through and that this is the last time seeing his brother.
Yeah. Yeah. And that he knew immediately that this isn't something that he was going to get out of.
Yeah.
I think it's that thing that happens sometimes, doesn't it, with that kind of clarity that you have in like really intense emergency situations.
Yeah.
It's just so sad for the family.
All right, now we're moving on to discuss the magar or marsh crocodile, a medium-sized, broad-snouted crocodile native to freshwater habitats from southeastern Iran to the Indian subcontinent, including southern Iran, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, the Republic of India, the Maldives, and Sri Lanka, up to an elevation of 420 meters or 1,380 feet. And like most of its other crocodile relatives, the magar inhabits freshwater lakes, rivers, and marshes, and definitely prefers slow-moving shallow water bodies. It also thrives in artificial reservoirs and irrigation canals. The magar has the widest snout of all its living relatives, and adult females are on average approximately 2.5 meters or 8 feet around in length, with males usually measuring approximately 1 meter more, so 3.5 meters to 11-ish feet. And its prey is similar to its relatives as well, but one thing in particular that is definitely worth mentioning is how insanely intelligent these animals are. Magars have been documented, and I know that's what Annie kind of was hinting at before. They are using lures to catch birds, and this is making them the first reptiles who have been observed using tools. So basically what they do is they'll get sticks or twigs and they balance them on their heads or back, so they look like a floating log with kind of nesting material, which is super enticing to birds. And when a bird lands and wants to, get this nesting material, that's when they strike. They are also dangerous to humans, and according to the CSG, quote, the magar crocodile is responsible for the third highest number of attacks on humans annually, behind only the Nile and the saltwater crocodiles. In recent years, it is estimated that around 50 to 60 people have been killed annually, mostly in India. The highest numbers have been reported from the Indian state of Gujarat and Uttar Pradesh, where muggers are frequently found in areas of high human population density, including urban areas, end quote.
It's really kind of wild to think about city crocodiles, isn't it? Like, you don't...
Yeah, you'd think they would stay away from... Yeah.
Yeah, right? It's...
But then they also go where they find easy prey, easy food.
That's right.
Yeah.
Not unlike raccoons.
Yeah, not unlike all animals. I mean, that's how we ended up with dogs.
You're not wrong. There's also, I should mention, I have a little YouTube playlist that I've made again of all the documentaries that I watched when I was sort of researching crocs. And so we will, of course, add that in our sources. And I don't know, maybe that's something we can link to when we post the YouTube video, like for further watching. But I only mention it because it was actually really hard for me to watch. There's a lot of footage of crocodiles hunting. And specifically this thing they do where they're just like, nothing to see here. I'm a log with some branches on me.
That's so crazy to me.
Yeah, they'll just sit there for hours and hours and hours and hours, and a bird will see the sticks and think that is perfect. And as they approach, they launch themselves out and grab them so fast.
Just now have to imagine like a cartoon crocodile kind of collecting the nicest branches and twigs and then carefully arranging it.
I know.
Aesthetically pleasing on their head.
That's how you do it. And what's interesting to note is also, this is interesting to note and kind of reminds me a lot of sharks, great white sharks. When people are killed by mugger crocodiles, they tend not to be eaten in the same way as with almost every other crocodilian, which is interesting, isn't it? Because why? A lot of people believe that the attacks on humans, which are often fatal, are defensive or territorial.
Mm.
And we've already spoken at length about how you don't want to mess with croc babies. So now we're moving on to the final two species that we are discussing. They are the saltwater crocodile and the Nile crocodile, the second largest reptile in the world and the crocodile responsible for the most deaths each year. So let's start with the Nile. An adult male Nile crocodile is 11 to 16 feet long, which is 3.5 to 5 meters. And as is true with all crocs, they do, of course, sometimes exceed these averages. And the females are always a bit smaller, but no less deadly. The Nile crocodile is native to all of the same freshwater haunts as its cousins. It lurks in the swamps and the lakes and the rivers, similar terrain in 26 countries on the African continent. Lake Turkana in Kenya has one of the largest undisturbed Nile crocodile populations. Here's a fun fact. A group of crocodiles is called a basque when on land and a float when in the water.
I like it.
Isn't it good? And I'm not sure if we mentioned it in our previous episodes, but a group of alligators is known as a congregation of alligators, no matter if they're on land or water.
That's boring.
It is. It really is. Nile crocodiles are believed to potentially kill hundreds, if not thousands of people each year, which is more than all of the other crocodiles combined. It's partly because they are more aggressive toward people than the previous species we've discussed who, while they can be aggressive, generally speaking, tend to shy away from humans. This is definitely not the case with the Nile crocodile. They are all up in your business. They are near you and they are aggressive.
Yeah, so they are definitely a more aggressive species. And then you also have to consider the fact that among all the other species we've discussed, the Nile crocodiles are more likely to be in constant proximity to places where people live, which obviously leads to a deadly combination. And once a Nile crocodile reaches almost 7 feet or just about over 2 meters, it's absolutely perfectly capable of taking a child or a pet.
That's right.
Let's talk briefly about two of the most famous Nile crocodiles, Gustav and Henry. Henry is an unusually docile Nile crocodile living at the Croc World Conservation Center in Scottsburg, South Africa. He apparently was a problem as a young crocodile, as many teenagers are, and he had allegedly eaten some people, not just livestock. He nibbled on some people.
Don't do it, Henry.
The thing is, relocating them doesn't always work because they can be absolutely remarkable and travel incredibly long distances to return to where they were taken from. So if you don't want to kill the animal, relocating it to a zoological site is the only other option. And it's not a bad one. There it can spend the rest of its life enjoying regular meals, and its only job is to make probably baby crocodiles with the ladies and look kind of toothy. Today, Henry is over 5 meters, which is 16 feet and 5 inches from snout to tail, and weighs 700 kilograms or 1,543 pounds. They believe, this is crazy, that he was actually born in 1900, making him around 125 years old, which would mean the oldest crocodile in captivity.
Yeah, I looked at their website for the Croc Center, and I thought it was really nice because apparently he has a buddy there who's not quite as big as he is, which is really, really nice. Crocodiles are way more social than alligators. Alligators are very happy on their own, apart from the whole mother babies thing. But crocodiles are social and they like having other crocodiles around. They're still territorial, but they're in groups more often. And so it's kind of interesting to note that they are both much more aggressive than alligators, and they're also much more social than alligators. They're more likely to live in a group and hunt in a group, feed in a group, whereas the video I saw with the alligator expert was saying how, when you see a whole bunch of alligators together for a film or something, it's definitely in a gator farm because they don't do that in the wild, whereas crocodiles do, if that makes sense. Yeah? Way to spoil movies for your friends going forward. So, yeah, it's nice. It's really nice that Henry has a friend. I know the people who listen to our podcast will care about this. I know we keep also saying that these things will take your children and these things will take your pets. But I feel like I think the idea of losing our dog or losing our child for us is humans is much scarier than the idea of something happening to myself. So if you don't give a real good perimeter between you and a body of water when you're out with your kids or out with your pets, if you don't do it for you, do it for them. Okay. So now we need to move on to salties, but before we do that, we have to just speak very quickly about Gustav. Gustav is a legendary and very problematic Nile crocodile who lives in the Ruzizi River and northern shores of Lake Tanganyika in Burundi. His size is estimated to be 20 feet or 6 meters long, and it is thought that he weighs over 2,000 pounds or around 907 kilograms. You can tell it's Gustav and not some other random massive croc because some of the many, many failed attempts to kill or capture him have left him with really distinctive bullet scars on his head. Locals believe that he has killed 200 to 300 people. The problem is a lot of the experts believe the true number is closer to probably around 60. Part of the reason that it's difficult is there's been a lot of turmoil in this part of the world. And so a similar situation to another crocodile story we're going to be talking about later. And if all of this sounds familiar, it's because in 2004, there was a documentary made called Capturing the Killer Croc. In it, they follow herpetologist Patrice Fay's extensive efforts to capture Gustav for study and also, of course, for safety reasons. So the team built a massive 30-foot, 2,000-pound cage to trap him. They baited it with live, really? Is it because T-Rex wants to hunt? Baited it with both live and dead animals and installed infrared cameras. Spoiler alert, they did not catch him. The last confirmed sighting was in 2009. And while there have been claims he was killed, there's no photographic evidence of it. He would be very old by now, but thanks to Henry, we know how old they can get. And so who knows, it's possible he might still be out there.
To be fair, though, animals in the wild do usually have a shorter lifespan, but yeah, it's absolutely possible he's out there. Here's a final unfun fact for Floridians, just in case you all haven't had enough lately. Apparently, there have been Nile crocodiles caught in southern Florida, and it is believed there may be more of them out there.
Yeah, not to worry you or anything. But
I'm
listen,
sorry. It's not like there's already enough on your plate, so now you have Nile crocodiles to worry about as well. So they have been likely released intentionally or not intentionally by someone who had them as an illegal pet, and the DNA confirms they are all related to each other, but are not a match to known captive animals. So in addition to the serious python infestation you've got going on down there, now you've got Nile crocodiles as well. So stay safe, Florida, please.
Please, just watch where you're jogging.
You're kind of the Australia of USA, right? In a way, with your animals.
Yeah, for the love of God. It is the Australia of the USA when it comes to wildlife.
Yeah.
I think that's fair, yeah.
All right, speaking of Australia, we are now moving on to the largest of the crocodilians, the saltwater crocodile. Also called the estuarine crocodile, Indo-Pacific crocodile, marine crocodile, sea crocodile, and informally, and my favorite, the salty.
That's right. Salty with an IE.
Yeah, it's cute. The saltwater crocodile is the absolute heavyweight champion of reptiles. Males can get up to 6 meters or about 20 feet long, weighing over a ton of between 1 and 1.5 tons. So that's 2,200 to 3,300 pounds. They are the very definition of an apex predator, perfectly willing to eat just about anything that enters their territory. Fish, birds, large mammals, and yes, even sharks. Has anyone watched the Asylum film called Mega Shark vs. Crocosaurus? There you go. It's almost a documentary.
Can we watch it for Cinema Macabre?
Female salties are a whole different story. They are much, much smaller. They are rarely growing beyond 3 meters or just under 10 feet, which by crocodile standards makes them almost dainty.
Yeah, they're not safe though. Don't. Yeah, smaller isn't safer for sure in these cases. Saltwater crocodiles are found from India's east coast across Southeast Asia through Indonesia and all the way to northern Australia, even Micronesia. They are adaptable. They live in rivers, estuaries, brackish swamps, and the open ocean. Although their populations were once devastated by hunting for their hides, protections have helped them recover. Since 1996, they've officially been listed as least concern on the IUCN Red List, which is great. But make no mistake, they very much remain threatened in places by habitat loss and, of course, illegal killing. They're also considered extremely dangerous to humans. What makes them especially impressive is their ability to travel really long distances at sea. How do we know that? Well, researchers in Australia fitted crocodiles with satellite transmitters and found they could ride ocean currents for hundreds of kilometers. One individual floated nearly 600 kilometers, that's 370 miles, along the coast in under a month, conserving energy by letting the water do most of the work. Another traveled 411 kilometers, or 255 miles, in just 20 days. Sometimes taking breaks in sheltered bays, waiting for currents to change before heading back out. And we all think of crocodilians as mostly being kind of lazy, spending long hours basking in the sun or drifting in rivers. But salties are among the most active crocodilians. They can spend weeks at sea in search of new territory, and in some cases, barnacles have been found growing on their scales, proving just how long they've been in the ocean. I feel like I didn't know how oceany they were. Like, I know about the box jellyfish and the cute little blue octopus or whatever. I know there's all these little cute things in the ocean that can kill you, as well as bull sharks and great white sharks, all that jazz. I didn't know that also saltwater crocodiles were in the ocean. I thought maybe like where rivers opened into the ocean, like more of that kind of thing, not like the open ocean. It's terrifying. And they can stay underwater for astonishing stretches of time. They slow their heart rate and their oxygen use in order to dive for extended periods. And they can stay underwater for up to 2 hours. 2 hours, sometimes more in very large animals. They've been recorded at depths of around 15 meters or 50 feet, but experts suspect they're capable of going much deeper. Why does this terrify me? I don't know why this is so scary to me, or impressive. Impressive is a better term than scary because that's their home. But yeah, if you're keeping score, the largest reptile on Earth, world-class swimmer, ambush predator, long-distance traveler, champion breath holder, and not someone you ever want to meet while taking a swim. They're also really, really intelligent. In all the Croc docs that I watched, they make a point to say, if you're camping near a water source, for example, where crocodilian might be, this also bothered me. Like, not bothered me, but like, I found this quite scary. Make sure you don't always return to the same place. So if you're going to get water to boil from the river or washing clothes or whatever it is, don't return to the same place each time. Mix it up. Go at different times of the day. Go to different locations. Never go to the same spot twice because the crocodiles are watching. And if you go 3 times, they'll have you. They will understand your pattern.
They're watching us and learning. They
are. They have problem-solving capabilities like velociraptors. Never mind velociraptors. I'm transferring all of that shock and awe onto crocodiles.
They are adapting. And crocodiles might not have the biggest brains in the animal kingdom. In fact, in saltwater crocodiles, the brain can be as little as 0.05% of their body weight. But, as we just heard, that absolutely does not mean they are stupid, quite the opposite. They are super quick learners. They are able to pick up complex tasks with very little training. They've been observed tracking the seasonal migrations of their prey, which means they're not just waiting around for food, lying basking in the sun, waiting for the birds to wander in their mouth. There's also evidence they may be communicating in ways we don't fully understand yet. For an animal that's been on Earth for over 200 million years, it's safe to assume they've perfected a few tricks here and there, and we are only just beginning to notice. I mean, they had time on their side.
They really have. And the thing that's wild too is like with the communication, we're only just starting to understand how that kind of works. And long story short, really short, one of the things they look at is not just do babies make a certain sound when there's a threat, for example. Do they always make the same sound when there's a threat? Or have they been observed using different sounds to indicate different specific threats, which is what's happening with crocodiles now. So they'll have a different word for snake and a different word for, big boy crocodile. You know what I mean? Like,
it's crazy. Yeah.
I feel like we're really only scratching the surface of the consciousness of all the animals that we share the planet with.
And that being said, so the saltwater crocodiles in particular have absolutely earned their reputation as one of the few reptiles that will actively prey on humans. Alongside the Nile crocodile, they are the most likely to become man-eaters. And honestly, the grim truth is, if a salty manages to get hold of you, survival is very, very unlikely. So our best advice in this case, please try to stay away from them. I mean, try to stay away from all of them, but be especially mindful of the salties and the Nile crocodiles, is what we're saying.
That's right, because they are above us on the food chain. We are below them on the food chain. So Australia keeps meticulous records on croc attacks, and from 1971 to 2013, there were 106 reported fatalities, which is actually not an enormous number considering how massively huge the country of Australia is and the number of people living alongside crocodile habitats. But that's largely thanks to extensive safety efforts. Warning signs posted everywhere near rivers, billabongs, and beaches throughout the north, reminding people that crocodiles are always a possibility. In Australia's Northern Territory, so-called quote-unquote problem crocodiles, the ones who get a little too interested in people, are sometimes relocated.
It's so funny because here we have a problem bear. That kind of travels around Austria, Czech Republic, these kind of areas, the problem bear. I think his name is Bruno, maybe, or was. I'm not sure if he's still alive.
Bruno.
But he never attacked humans. But
that's good.
For whatever reason, he was a problem.
Yeah. So we already mentioned, though, right? So the problem with problem crocs is, as we mentioned before, relocating them isn't always a great option. Yeah. It's not like you can just be like, oh, let's, like mice, right? Like, I'm going to drive you 20 miles away and release you, and then you won't be able to get your way back. Crocodiles, they'll find their way back. They will. And so that is why so many of these guys end up in zoological parks as an option. And studies around Darwin have shown that the majority of the aggressive crocodiles that they have to deal with are males, which tracks with what we know about territorial behavior in terms of high levels of testosterone, which we've discussed previously.
Which also tracks with basically all males in every species.
That's right. We're not attacking men. This is just
it's
biology.
Just the testosterone. Yeah, biology.
Right.
When we talk about crocodile attacks, the numbers can be a little slippery. Outside of Australia, many incidents are never officially reported, especially in rural or low-income areas where people and crocodiles live side by side. In Borneo, for example, the average number of fatal attacks was nearly 3 per year in the early 2000s. Fatal encounters have also been reported in Sumatra, the Andaman Islands, in India, and Burma. Some researchers estimate that 20 to 30 attacks may happen every year, and even that could be more on the conservative side. So the number could be higher, we just don't know. That being said, older claims that saltwater crocodiles killed thousands of people annually were almost certainly exaggerated, and in some cases deliberately so. But why, you might ask? Well, leather companies and hunting organizations had obviously an interest in portraying crocodiles as these bloodthirsty monsters, because the more dangerous they seemed, the easier it was to justify killing them off for profit. If you have this super dangerous animal who's there to prey on your children, on your pets, or on yourself, it's more likely that humans are going to be like, yes, please just get rid of all of them.
That's right.
Do you want an example for that? One of the most infamous crocodile stories of all time is what's known as the Ramree Island Crocodile Massacre. If you've ever come across one of those strangest moments of World War II lists, you've probably seen it. And the story goes like this. In early 1945, as part of the Pacific War, around 1,000 Japanese soldiers were trapped by Allied forces in the mangrove swamps off the coast of Burma, which is today Myanmar. According to the legend or the story, only about 20 of those soldiers ever made it out alive. The rest, it was said, were eaten alive by swarms of saltwater crocodiles. The main source for this part is an article from How Stuff Works. So, quote, an Allied commander even described the scene in chilling detail. Quote, that night was the most horrible that any member of the ML crews ever experienced. The scattered rifle shots in the pitch-black swamp punctured by the screams of wounded men crushed in the jaws of huge reptiles, and the blurred worrying sound of spinning crocodiles made a cacophony of hell that has rarely been duplicated on Earth. At dawn, the vultures arrived to clean up what the crocodiles had left. Of about 1,000 Japanese soldiers that entered the swamps of Ramree, only about 20 were found alive, end quote. And that horrifying image stuck. By 1968, the Guinness Book of World Records even recognized it as the most human fatalities in a crocodile attack, crediting the reptiles with some 900-something deaths. Quote, but as with so many stories that sound too gruesome to be true, historians have taken a closer look. Frank McLean, who wrote a book on the Battle of Burma, said the crocodile massacre story, quote, offends every single canon of historical verifiability, end quote, and even basic ecological logic. He asked the obvious question. If thousands of crocodiles were involved in the massacre, how had these ravening monsters survived before, and how were they able to survive later, end quote. So the question is, obviously, what really happened at Ramree? And according to research cited by the How Stuff Works article, which drew heavily on Christopher Saunders' investigation for the avocado, the Japanese didn't actually lose 900 men there. Records from Japanese military archives show that about half of the trapped soldiers escaped. That still leaves roughly 500 deaths, but the causes weren't reptilians. Local Burmese villagers who lived through the battle remembered that most casualties were from disease, dehydration, and starvation in the brutal swamp environment. Quote, and those terrifying noises British patrols reported hearing in the night, according to British records accessed by the National Geographic, the Allies witnessed a desperate mass attempt by Japanese soldiers to swim across the channel to the mainland. Except for a few swimmers, it's doubtful that any survived the crossing, the official report noted. It's estimated that at least 100 Japanese were killed or drowned that night. 200 killed is regarded as a conservative estimate. About 40 loaded boats were known to have sunk. Possibly another 50 Japanese died in the mangrove from exposure and want of food and water. 14 prisoners were taken, end quote. So the real massacre of Ramree Island wasn't crocodiles at all, it was war. Common war, soldiers drowning, starving, being gunned down in a horrific and chaotic battle. That doesn't mean crocodiles had nothing to do with it. Local villagers told herpetologist Stephen Platt's team that perhaps 10 to 15 soldiers were actually taken by crocodiles when they tried to cross the channel. So in the end, the Ramree Island crocodile massacre is mostly myth. I mean, there's a huge difference between 10 to 15 men being eaten by crocodiles.
Or 1,000. Yeah, that's a pretty significant. Yeah, it's an easy meal for a croc. Like a human, these guys take down water buffalo and
sharks.
Huge. Yeah, bull sharks.
Yeah.
We're easy. We don't have horns.
No.
We don't have any.
We're slow. We're so slow.
We're
especially
slow
in the water.
As shit. Yes.
So yeah, you see, the truth is, as always, way more complicated. Still, the danger is real. In the Andaman Islands, for example, fatal attacks on humans have reportedly increased in recent years, and habitat destruction and the loss of natural prey obviously is a part of the reason. And as always, when humans and apex predators are forced into closer contact, the risk rises, and the animals usually aren't the winners in the long run.
It's true. It's really easy to focus only on the danger, but I honestly cannot help but admire them tremendously. These animals are living fossils. They are survivors from a time when dinosaurs still roamed the earth. They're smart in ways that we are still trying to learn how to measure appropriately. They're so well adapted to both water and land and capable of breathtaking feats of endurance and precision. I just really honestly think they deserve so much more respect than what we give them, even though it means, and it should always mean, respecting them from a very safe distance. Which is why, of course, we can't talk about crocodiles and crocodile awareness without talking about the late, great Steve Irwin. Just saying his name kind of makes me smile. Oh, I used to have such a crush on Steve Irwin. Can I just tell it? Yes. My first ever real crush that I ever had was a boy in, I think, 8th grade. And I thought I really had a crush on him. But in hindsight, I remember finding out he liked someone else, and I was bummed. And then I remember telling my friend Melanie, actually, the thing I was really bummed about was that he had lizards. And I think the reason I liked him is I thought that if we could go out, then I could hang out more with his lizards.
That's such an Annie thing to do.
He was just like, I was using him to get to his lizards, but he didn't want me. When I was a child, I looked like Ed McMahon. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about Steve Irwin. All of this information on Steve Irwin comes directly from the Australia Zoo website, his website, and it's the information that I assume his family has put out there at this point. So that's my source. All right. So Stephen Robert Irwin was born on February 22nd, 1962 in Upper Ferntree Gully, Victoria. When his parents moved the family to Beerwah, Queensland, they opened the Beerwah Reptile Park in 1970. And that is really where the story begins. Steve grew up surrounded by wildlife, and it seemed like reptiles were in his blood. He caught his first venomous snake, a common brown, when he was only 6 years old. And apparently, he was the kind of kid who could turn up late for school because he made his mom stop the car so he could rescue a lizard off the road. And that's the kind of heart he had right from the beginning. By the time he was 9, he was already helping to catch small problem crocodiles, the ones hanging around at the boat ramps. His technique? Leap onto them in the water and wrestle them into the dinghy. It sounds insane, and it kind of was, but Steve had this really uncanny sixth sense with animals. It was something that he had spent his whole life developing. By 1980, the family park had been renamed the Queensland Reptile and Fauna Park. This was Steve's home, it was his haven, and it's where he poured in endless hours caring for wildlife. But he also wanted to make a difference beyond the park. He spent months at a time in far north Queensland, living in remote wilderness with only his dog for company, capturing problem crocodiles for the government so they wouldn't be killed. The capture and relocation methods that he developed are still used around the world today. Steve's folks handed him the reins, so to speak, and he officially took over management of the family park in October of 1991. And it seems like the stars really aligned for them because 2 days later, he met Terry Rains. She was a tourist from Oregon, and she was visiting Australia with friends and decided at the last minute to stop by this park. And it was love at first sight. Less than a year later, on June 4th, 1992, they were married in Eugene, Oregon. And instead of a honeymoon, they filmed a crocodile relocation in Queensland. That documentary became the seed of the Crocodile Hunter, and the show grew into an international phenomenon. Millions of viewers around the world tuned in to watch Steve and Terry handle animals most of us would not go near, while also teaching us to love them. Steve's mantra was, quote, conservation through exciting education. And that is exactly what he delivered. As much as he was a conservationist and a TV star, Steve treasured being a dad even more. He often said that if he was remembered for anything, it wanted it to be for being a good father. Tragically, Steve Irwin died in 2006. On September 4th, while filming a documentary off the coast of Port Douglas, he was snorkeling in shallow water above a stingray. In what experts have called an incredibly rare accident, the ray struck upward with its barb, piercing his chest. Steve died almost instantly, and marine biologists were quick to explain how very unusual this was. Stingrays are not aggressive animals, and fatal attacks? They're pretty much unheard of. There are more recorded deaths from lightning strikes than from stingrays. Every single possible wrong thing had to happen for him to die, but that's exactly what happened. For many of us, the loss really hit hard. Steve was larger than life, and his joy for wildlife was infectious. But almost instantaneously, his death became fodder for pop culture jokes. Late-night TV, memes, cruel internet humor. For a while, it seemed like everyone had a stingray joke. And that was hard to watch because it really ignored who Steve really was. He wasn't just the crocodile hunter, the guy who said Crikey while wrangling animals. He was a conservationist, a husband, a dad, and someone who built his whole life around protecting creatures that most of us overlook or even fear. It's why I often say, don't forget to love the unloved, right? Fortunately, with time, the jokes faded, and Steve's legacy has only grown. Today, when we remember Steve Irwin, it's hopefully not just for the way he died, but also for the way he lived, with absolute passion humor, and love for the wild world. His list of achievements is extraordinary. Discovering a new species of turtle, Irwin's turtle, founding wildlife warriors, receiving the Australian Government Centenary Medal, being nominated for Australian of the Year, and in 2007, establishing the Steve Irwin Wildlife Reserve, a massive 334,000-acre sanctuary in Cape York. He was also honored with a professorship from the University of Queensland, inducted into the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame, and even had a snail, a little land snail named after him, Crikey Steve Irwin. In 2018, he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But of course, beyond the awards and the accolades, what I admire most is how much Steve loved the natural world and how truly genuine that love was. He was absolutely fearless in the field, but very tender in the way he spoke about every single animal, from a snail to a man-eating crocodile. He was proof that education doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be dry. It can be joyful and a little wild. I know some people would say, and they'd be right, that the way he handled animals wasn't always necessarily the best way to do things. I think if Steve were alive today, he'd agree. And he would believe in the mantra, when you know better, you do better. But I would bet my soul on the fact that every single thing he did was for love and not for exploitation. I don't think he was ever trying to. I think he was doing the best he could with what he knew at the time. And you have to remember, he was one of the world's leading experts. So, yeah, I just think the world is a better place because Steve Irwin was in it. I think he opened up the whole world's eyes to how complex and interesting these animals are. And it's because of him that so many people today look at these animals with respect and appreciation and not just fear.
Yeah. And I have to say, as tragic as his death was, and I don't want to sound dismissive or anything, but the one thing is that he's the absolute example of he died doing the thing he loved. And his 100%. Death was instantly, and I really think and I really hope it was just like he was there snorkeling above the stingrays and then he was gone.
It was pretty quick. Yeah. It was just one of those things where it was like, wow, how
did this happen? Yeah.
We just all thought I hate to say it, but I think everyone thought that if something terrible happened, it would have happened with a croc.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think it was just really surprising. It's like there was a famous racing motorcycle racer who was killed while riding his bicycle. And it's like, you don't expect that they're going to die on a bicycle, like that kind of thing. The last fun fact we want to mention about crocodiles is if you've heard the term crocodile tears, if you're crying and someone doesn't believe you're crying, they might say, oh, those are crocodile tears. Crocodiles do sometimes tear up and weep when they're eating, but it's not because of emotion. It's just a practical thing that happens sometimes when they chew, It's anthropomorphizing the crocodile. As we discussed in previously that, what was his name? The alligator, the crocodile.
Pacho,
mm-hmm.
I think.
Pacho. Yeah. He kind of reminded me of, was it Henry at the Wildlife Reserve? Who's like, okay, well, if you're going to feed me every day, and that's cool. And that, friends, concludes our discussion on crocodilians. There was just so much information we didn't know before researching them, and stuff that creeped me out and stuff that just amazed me. So obviously we had to share it all with you, and we hope you've enjoyed this as much as we have.
I'm sure, because we got so many nice messages and emails and people saying they absolutely loved learning about the crocodiles.
I felt really badly because I know we have a lot of Aussie listeners. Hi, I hope to visit you one day. And I was like, don't worry, I'm going to come back soon with this because, they're so scary.
They are. I remember.
Send us more stories.
I'm still thinking I have to look at the photo again because now I'm not sure that it was an alligator. I think it was an alligator that we saw in the Everglades. But there are also crocodiles, so I really have to look again. I think it was an alligator, but this kind of primal reaction you have to looking at it being so, it was right next to the boat, right? So.
I don't like that. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, I try to remember that there's always going to be exceptions, right? But they're a lot more intelligent than we think they are. It's like, I don't know that they'd necessarily go for a fully adult human walking along the riverbank. They'd say no. A lot of the times when people are killed, they're killed trying to rescue their animal.
Or the child.
That's why we say don't walk your dog, because very often the only person that wins in that situation, actually nobody fucking wins.
There's this video of the guy at the golf course who rescues his little tiny dog.
Oh.
Have you seen it? It's been years. I have to look for it.
I can't watch it. I know the one you mean.
He gets him out. He gets him out.
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would go in after my dog. I would. I think. I don't think you'd even think about it. I think you just react, right? Like you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is it. This is why it's so important. And if we leave you with one really key thing to take back, and this, I hate to say it. I really sincerely hate to say it because I have to remind myself of it all the time, but don't feed wildlife. Don't do it. Especially anything that is a predator.
Yeah.
Because what happens when you feed the gator, oh, you like the gator, oh, you're going to throw the chicken to the gator all the time, you visit, you bring him a fish, you do that.
That's a bad idea.
Their brain becomes wired to associate people with food. And it's not hard to make the jump from people as food. And so at the risk of sounding like the biggest Debbie Downer, when you feed a wild predator of any kind, what you've actually done is kind of signed that animal's death sentence.
Yeah.
Because if they feel safe to approach people, they're going to be euthanized. They're going to be tagged and relocated to a zoo away from the rest of their creatures. Like there's no good future for that animal. And that is why we observe and we don't feed the animals, Annie. That's why. You cannot. That's what I tell myself.
Absolutely. No, don't do it.
I'm the problem. It's me. But I don't feed wildlife. You got to be careful. All right. Should we get out of here?
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right.
If you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, please leave us a rating and or review on your favorite podcast app. Leave a comment under Spotify episodes or under the YouTube episodes. And recommend us to friends and family and colleagues and everyone while you're waiting in line at the supermarket, whatever.
That's right. Please. Thanks again to all of our patrons. If you want more information on our Patreon program, go to patreon.com and search Fresh Hell Podcast. Get in, watch our recent Amy Bradley is Missing coverage. Tell us your thoughts. Don't forget to keep sending us your Croc stories. I'm really enjoying the messages and article links we've gotten to local Crocs turning up in unexpected places and experiences that you guys have had. So send those in. We could probably do an episode. That would be so fun. Also, keep sending in those spooky stories because Halloween is coming and so is our listener episode.
Send them to freshhellpodcast@gmail.com. All the other information, just go to our webpage, freshhellpodcast.com, and join our Facebook group. And I think that's it for this week. Please tell all your pets we said hi. Hug them, cuddle them, kiss them. Your pets, not the wildlife. Again, keep them away from the wildlife. The crocodiles, the boars.
That's right.
That's always my fear. And all these things, be kind to all the animals out there. Annie, say it.
Don't forget to love the unloved, please.
Exactly. Don't forget to love the unloved. Be kind to your fellow human beings and be kind to yourself.
And if you're going through hell,
keep going. Tschüss.
See you next week.